Hello, econ class. This is Mr. Stark coming to you today. It's actually Thursday night, but you'll be seeing this on Friday morning. You are going to be taking a supply quiz today. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and go through some parts of supply, and also on the supply test, there's going to be a section where you have to read some scenarios and determine whether you're dealing with a change in supply or a change in demand. So again, make sure you go through the PowerPoints, the videos. Those will give you all the information that I'm going to go over again now, but I'm just going to kind of touch on some things that might be a little bit helpful for you on the mastery. So let me go ahead and share the screen with you so you can see the classwork from today. So supply, very similar to demand. Excuse me. Demand, price goes up, people buy less of it. Price goes down, people buy more of it. Supply is the opposite. You're thinking as a producer, you're thinking as someone who makes goods and services. So prices go up, you like that, you make more. Prices go down, you don't like that, you make less. And the graphs are very similar as well. If you have a single supply line with an arrow going up it, that means price is going up. A single supply line with an arrow going down it, price is going down. So I want to go ahead and skip forward to this part on the practice, because this is where a lot of students get a little intimidated, because if you look at the choices, we got a lot of lines here. So the first thing you can do in this kind of situation is get your bearings. And what I mean by that is distinguish the two graphs that are dealing with changes in supply and the two graphs that are dealing with changes in demand. So if you look here, graphs B and D have two supply lines so they're shifts. Now these are all dealing with the determinants. None of these are dealing with changes in price. But as you can see, B and D have two supply, or each of B has two supply lines and D has two supply lines. B has a new line to the right. Right is still more. Same thing with demand. Right is more, left is less. So B is increasing supply. D as in dog, left is less supply. So if you're dealing with a question that's talking about supply, you know it's got to be only B or D. Those are your only two choices. And then A and C have two demand lines. With A, a shift to the right, so that's demand increasing, right is more. And then C, a shift to the left is less. So with that in mind, let's go through these questions together, and a lot of you did very well on these. But let me give you some tips on how you can, because you will see questions like this on the supply quiz. Hopefully you're watching this before you take the supply quiz. So number one, at a candy bar factory, keyword factory, caramel has become more expensive, which has changed candy bar production. Well, you hear those words, factory and production, you should think, well, that's supply. You're making something. So it's dealing with supply. So would this cause an increase or decrease? Well, if you make candy bars and one of your ingredients, caramel, goes up in price, it's more expensive for you to make your candy bars. So you can't make as many. So supply is going to decrease. Let's look at the graphs here. Scroll down. Remember, only B and D deal with changes in supply. So we're looking at which one deals with less supply. You should be thinking D as in dog, left is less. Now, one of the things hopefully you got from the PowerPoint and the videos today is they talked about equilibrium. That is that magical point where the lines cross each other, where supply and demand equal each other, okay? And as you can see here, I have it labeled for you. The answer is D for this one. The first equilibrium here is right here. The second one, when supply decreases, all you have to worry about is whether it's higher or lower than the first. As you can see here, the second cross is above the first. So that means the price went up, the equilibrium went up. And that should make sense, because the less you supply of something, the higher the price it is. That's what we're seeing with gasoline right now. There's less gasoline to go around, supply shortages, higher prices. So that's the first one. Let's look at number two. In which determinant, it doesn't ask that. Remember the supply determinants? I'm not going to go over those. Hopefully you got those from the video and from the reading, but this would be input costs. Anytime you're dealing with an ingredient, this determinant's input costs. Number 2, labor productivity. That's the determinant right there, hint, hint. Has increased the marginal product at the toy store factory, another key word, because they've hired 2 additional workers. Toys are now cheaper to produce. Again, you should be thinking supply. Anytime you're dealing with making or producing something, they mentioned factory, that's supply. You hire more workers, you can make more. It's that simple. So we're looking for an increase in supply. That would be B as in boy, right is more. Equilibrium, the first cross is right here. Second one is below it. So the equilibrium price went down. And that makes sense, right? The more you supply of something, the less rare it becomes, the cheaper it becomes. Okay. Number 3, in the Bahamas, a change has occurred regarding the amount of hotel rooms bought during spring break. Well, think about it. Well, first of all, they're talking about people buying hotel rooms. Anytime you're dealing with people buying things, that's going to be demand. So we're dealing with demand here. So you know that it's only going to be either A or C as far as the graphs. If you think about it, during Bahamas is kind of like a spring break destination. A lot of people go there for spring break. You're going to have an increase in demand for hotel rooms. The graph, you want an increase in demand. We're looking at right is more, graph A. And then again, the equilibrium. The first price was here. When demand went up, guess what? The price went up. Simple correlation there. And the determinant, of course, would be market size, because during spring break in the Bahamas, there's a lot more people coming into those islands, and so more demand. And then number 4, a change has occurred in the purchasing of a type of doll that has lead paint, which is poisonous. Consumers are now buying less dolls than before. Again, you hear consumers buying, you should think demand. And as you can imagine, demand would decrease. Matter of fact, in reality, they would take those dolls off the shelves and discontinue them. But for the sake of the question, demand would decrease. So we're looking at graph C. Left is less, and demand goes down. As you can see, the equilibrium price goes down as well. So that's the explanation of those. And that's probably one of the tougher areas for students. The last thing I want to mention before I close it up is elasticity of supply. Similar demand, you're still going to have for inelastic, it's still going to be more up and down, more vertical. Elastic is going to be more horizontal. The only 2 things you need to ask yourself. First of all, is something time sensitive? In other words, let's say you're an apple farmer, well, not really an apple farmer, you're an orchard owner, and it's harvest time in the fall. For some reason, apples are super cheap. Can you put your apples on a shelf and wait for months for prices to go up? And the answer is no, because your apples spoil. They're time sensitive. Same thing with any kind of fresh vegetable, fresh meat, any kind of fresh food, anything that cannot be stored on a shelf for months because it goes bad, or any kind of event like a concert or a baseball game or a sporting event, that's going to be inelastic. You can't supply less of it. You supply what you have on hand. On the other hand, something like Spam, this kind of meat in a can, that can sit on a shelf for months, even years. That would be elastic. And the second question you ask yourself, is your factory working at full capacity? So in other words, if you're a Tesla factory making these electric cars, gases are really high, gas prices are high. People are buying Teslas, electric cars. If you own a Tesla factory and you're using every single machine, every single employee, you're maxed out. You would like to make more because Tesla prices are way up, but you can't. That's inelastic. On the other hand, if you can crank it up a notch and use more employees, use more machines, that would be elastic. So make sure, once again, please make sure you do the look at the videos, because there's a couple videos that do a nice review over supply and demand graphing. I also have one in there as well about elasticity, I think. And the supply test is 25 quizzes, 25 questions, mastery. You're then going to start standard 4. We're skipping we're going to come back to standard 3, but we're going to go to taxes. You're going to take some notes on federal and state and local taxes. You're going to read an article on income tax inversions, and you're going to learn about how our national budget, basically what our tax dollars go to pay for. And I have it on the agenda, what slides you need to look at on the PowerPoint to complete the national budget activity that's on your assignment sheet. Yeah, so I did have office hours today from 1:15 to 2:15. Didn't have anybody come. That is your choice completely. But again, every day is 2 or 3 weeks of work, making sure you're staying on it. Email me questions. But anyway, you've almost made it through your first week. Good luck on the supply test, and I will talk to you later. Stark out.